My name is Kristan Rivers, and I'm with App Ceiling. Let me ask a very quick question here, because I think enough of the audience has changed since Josh's earlier question on this. How many of you represent developers or publishers within the room? Okay, great. How many of you have had your games, your own games that you work with, hacked, or have you experienced cheating or fraud within your games? I guess the vast majority, yeah. So I'm Kristan Rivers. I've been in digital entertainment for almost 20 years. I've got the gray hairs to show for that. Worked for a number of companies you guys might have heard of. In fact, PlayerX, who I see Tony Pierce, my good mate Tony Pierce is in here today. He's talking tomorrow about ICOs. You should definitely go to his talk. More recently, led Paramount Pictures' digital distribution team in Asia. And so, especially being in that market, we've seen a lot of fraud and cheating within both our own videos and games. And that's how I came across App Ceiling. So, App Ceiling have been doing content protection for about 20 years, almost 20 years now. Their first product was actually the first DRM interoperability for audio files. It was a brilliant idea. It allowed you to have one wrapper, one DRM wrapper, that would protect music to work both on Windows or on Windows devices, and on the iPod, and on iTunes. Or if you had an iTunes song, it would allow you to transcode it over to a Windows or other DRM without having to buy it again. Would have been perfect, except for about 1 month after it was launched, Apple removed all DRM from all their audio files. So App Ceiling had to kind of go back to the drawing board and figure out what's next. And they took their experience with content protection and applied it to movies. And that's their primary business today, is actually, like I said, that's how I've come across them, is actually doing DRM interoperability and more inexpensive DRM versus Fairplay, Widevine, these sorts of solutions. They also took, more recently, that same content protection expertise and applied it to mobile games. So they have a wrapper solution that allows you to basically take your APK at the very end of your workflow, upload it up to App Ceiling's servers. We wrap it, send it back to you in about 20 minutes, and then you can upload it to your app store. Worked with Nexon, several other games publishers, to provide this kind of protection for them. So I'll try in 20 minutes or so, a little bit less hopefully, to give a little bit of information about how the ecosystem around games hacking, the black ecosystem works, where the money's made in there, how it's done, a little bit of information about some technical guidance that you can think about if you haven't already as to how to protect yourself from some of this, and of course, I'll tell you a little bit about what App Ceiling does as well. I am not a developer myself, so if we get too deep into the technical questions, please bear with me and I will take that question offline. So when you look at the black ecosystem, there's three primary ways where other people are making money off of hacking or fraud within your games. There's more than 100 cheating apps out there for Android primarily. You can download. About 80% of them are from China. So these are generally apps that you download, and they're paid. You download them to your, many of them are paid. You download to your phone. Your phone may or may not need to be jailbroken, and then it will unlock or do different types of cheating and hacking against certain games that are on your phone. And they compete with each other for the most number of games or the best games that they can unlock, that they can hack. There's various professional hacking services as well. We'll dive into that in a moment. And then copycat and clone games is probably one of the ones that you guys have experienced the most. So when you look at the cheating tools in of themselves, Lucky Patcher, SB, Game Hacker, these are of the top 10 that we see attempting to hack games that we protect. These are the top 10 of them. So Lucky Patcher and Exposed Framework are generally the most common ones. But like I said, there's about 100 of them out there that people can download, pay for. And I do want to kind of stress, and I'll come back to this in a moment, a good percentage of these are actually paid apps, so they're making money off of being able to go and then hack your game. There's modding services, and they tend to split into two different areas. So the repositories are just places where there's access to hacked games, to hacked APKs. They're generally free to download, and they monetize their business through ads. There's also lots of forums on them as well, and people talk about, well, how do I hack this game? Has anybody found a good hack for this one? What's the best way to do this? And then the on-demand services are kind of even more interesting, and Android Republic being probably one of the biggest ones, where you can actually go in and pay a fee. So you get a monthly fee to have access to the best or the newest hacks. And if you pay more, generally kind of $20 to $30, you can actually request that they hack a particular game that you want. So you say, look, I need to pay $30 because I really want to hack whatever the latest game is I'm playing. And they'll look at it, and if they think they can do it, they'll take your money, and 2 weeks later, they'll give you that hacked version. You have first access to it, and then eventually it goes up into the repository. Interestingly enough, and I don't want to do too much of a sales pitch for AppSealing today, on Android, we monitor all these forums, and we see which games are being attacked. Android Republic, for their VIP service, for the one where you actually go and pay money to get a game hacked, they've basically banned any requests for AppSealing protected games. Touch wood, we haven't had any successful hacking attempts yet. So they said, look, we can't get through AppSealing's protection, so no request for that, and we won't take money for that. Another one that's been a little bit more recent that's kind of really interesting to us is in-game currency hacking services. So in these ones are generally a mobile URL that you go to on your phone. You type in your user ID, maybe your password for whatever game that you're looking at access to. You generally fill out a survey for some more information, and then you tell them what game you want and what game you want access to, and then 20 minutes later or immediately, depending, they actually will increase your gems, your diamonds, your in-game currency, etc. It's generally, from what we've seen, it seems to be they emulate a client, and if there's not good protection within the network traffic between that client and the server, they can then put in various kind of requests. Say, okay, look, this client has already done an IAP purchase. Give this person X amount, whatever. Cheat My Way, AP Care, there's a bunch of these ones. They come and go quite often. I don't even know if any of these are still up anymore. The Copycat clone games is a particular challenge that we see, and some of you guys have probably experienced this, I would guess, where you have a game, it's in soft launch, maybe in the Philippines somewhere, and you're doing really well. And then all of a sudden you're starting to see traffic from Vietnam, from China, from India, and you haven't launched in these markets. What can often happen, one of the most common ways this happens is that somebody will take your game, they'll decompile it, they will maybe change some of the assets, change the name within it, and then upload it to a store. And depending upon if your server's protected or if it's just a client-based game or primarily client-based game, again, you'll see traffic and you're not getting any monetization from that. A very kind of famous one was, and there's, I believe, still an ongoing lawsuit on this, which was Lilith Games in China sued Ucool in the US for their game Soul Clash. They felt that Heroes Charge was a direct copy of it. And they claim, I should say they allege, as part of their evidence, that on the Ucool game, Heroes Charge, if you went in and did a couple certain things, you would actually see the Lilith Games copyright come up. So that was their evidence that they presented that. And then to make things even uglier, actually Blizzard came in and sued both of them because they argued that that some of the models within the game were actually straight from Warcraft. So more reason just to protect your content in the first place. One of our partners in China sent us this fairly recently. This just shows on one of the app stores in China within the last 2 months or so, there were 3 games that they identified that were just copycat games already uploaded there. So a number of things kind of happen that causes problems for this, for you as a developer, as a publisher. Obviously, the game balance disruption. I mean, I'm sure anybody that's seen hacking on their games, first thing you see is in your support forums, people are complaining, this person's a hacker, that person's a hacker, and it may very well be. It may be they just got beaten legitimately, but maybe that these people are hacking. With developers and publishers I've worked with, quite often what we find is all of a sudden we see a bunch of hacking attempts from certain countries that we can identify. Vietnam has always been a common one for many of the companies that I've worked with, where the hacking attempts tend to come from there. Obviously, lost monetization from IAP fraud, depending upon how much you are protecting yourself against IAP fraud. Another more insidious way this happens, coming back to the copycat clone games, where if you do have a game that is successful, maybe in certain countries, but you haven't launched in other countries, and again, places we see this quite often, Vietnam, India, China, Brazil, people in these countries will see that you've got a successful game, they'll download it, they'll decompile it, they'll strip out your ad server, they will put in their own ad server, and then upload it to stores. And again, you're seeing traffic from these countries that you haven't launched in, and you're not getting any of the ad traffic from it either. And once it's up in a store in certain markets, China being the worst one, as you guys probably know, it's really hard to go and then get it taken down. It's hard to prove your ownership of that. Lowered ratings and downloads. Obviously, your legitimate users, both free and paying, don't enjoy having to compete against people that are not legitimate. So all these kind of reasons are the reasons why you want to think about how you might protect your game. There's two main pathways that mobile games tend to get hacked. The first one is actually in runtime. So running a game, maybe on a PC, and actually seeing what's happening within the game, looking at it, putting in their own hooks there, sending false code into it to see what happens, changing variables, whatever, to see what happens, analyzing what happens, and then going in and making changes to the game at that point. The other way is just to unpack the APK, decompile it, and analyze the code, and then go in and again make the changes to the code. End result being altering the code, making a mod, uploading it to a repository or wherever. And again, depending upon what type of game you are, or what platform you're working on, there's a number of tools to make this process even easier. So, and there's tutorials out there on how to do this using these various tools. You go onto YouTube and you'll find a bunch of tutorials on how to actually, how to hack a game using some of these tools. So, a number of ways to, and this is where we kind of get into the developer portion of this, where I will be outside my depth to some degree. A number of ways to kind of protect yourself from this. For anti-debugging, anti-tampering, you can look at checking the APK signature, very obvious things, making sure that it hasn't been changed in some way, make sure the native libraries that are there haven't been changed. Obfuscation, ProGuard from Google being a very good one that can help with this. None of these are 100%, by the way. Each of these are things that, that you can do to help protect against it. So obfuscation just kind of slows down the code reversal process, so it's not an end-all be-all. Hiding the value and the data of your variables is one that does help quite a bit as well, because one of the first things that people will do is they'll play a game and they'll look at, okay, my coin balance is 459, making this up. So you can look through and see all the variables that are set with these various tools, look through, see all the various variables that are set at 459, and say, okay, if we change that one, does that now increase my coin balance? So going in and maybe, instead of setting the coin balance at 459, saying the coin balance is 2 million divided by 3 plus the coin balance and another number, another hash number that you put in there. These are ways that you can kind of hide that, that variable. Obviously putting variables up on your server as much as possible, putting information up there versus storing locally. Encrypting data where you can, where you can't keep it on the client. Setting a blacklist is one of the things that we do, is setting a blacklist of cheating tools. If we see these other cheating tools on the device or in runtime, actually in runtime in general, then we will shut the game down. Looking for time hacks as well. This is one thing, especially more running in an emulator, one of the things people will do is slow down the time. And so if we see that the clock is acting funny, we'll just shut the game down. So various things that you can look at to basically protect your game. Various kind of cheating tools are out there. That's what you're looking for. So, what our proposal is, obviously legitimate players don't like this competition. They are not wanting to compete on an uneven playing field. This type of hacking doesn't just impact your immediate revenue, your immediate monetization. It also impacts your long term. All the money that you're spending on UA is actually diluted because you've got folks that are coming in and not monetizing in the way they have. So we'd actually say, look at your UA cost and how much is that versus the hacking if your game is getting significant hacking attempts. All the kind of basic anti-hacking technical guidance that's already out there, I've given you some, will help you kind of protect as well. We would also argue, as I said, consider a robust professional app security system like app sealing. There are others out there. As I said, our kind of USP is we're not another SDK, and most developers do have SDK fatigue. We just fit in the workflow right at the very end. So anyway, that's it. Thank you very much. I think we have time for a couple questions if anybody has any questions.